Is this the moment fans have been dreading for Jane Fonda? Hollywood's biggest names come and go. But Jane? She's always been in a league of her own. The woman is a living legend, a total powerhouse that has served us back-to-back iconic moments for over 6 decades. But now, fans are freaking out over the latest news about Jane. The internet is buzzing, prayers are going up, and people can't stop asking what's really going on with her. Is Jane Fonda okay? Is this the end of an era, and why are so many people fearing the worst? Buckle up because we're diving deep into her heartbreaking life update. Jane Fonda's Hollywood journey. If you're asked to describe Jane Fonda in one word, it'll be iconic. Jane is literally a living legend, an Oscar-winning actress, a fitness queen, and a political firestorm. But before she was any of these, she was just a little girl living in a world of glitz and glamour that was tainted with dark and painful secrets. Jane was born on December 21, 1937, in Manhattan, New York. Her father, Henry Fonda, was one of Hollywood's most respected actors at the time. The man was practically Hollywood's king and was loved by the fans and the cameras. However, most people didn't know that behind closed doors, he was cold, distant, and impossible to please. On the other hand, her mother, Frances Ford Seymour, was a stunning socialite who lived the perfect life in public. However, behind the scenes, she was struggling with severe mental health issues. Jane's life may have been almost perfect, but then a tragedy that changed her life forever struck. When Jane was just 12 years old, her mother passed away in a psychiatric hospital due to mental health challenges. And the worst part of it all was the fact that Jane wasn't even told the truth. Her father told her that her mother had died from a heart condition, and for a long time she believed the lie. It wasn't until she was much older that she found out the devastating truth after reading about it in a movie magazine. That kind of pain? It doesn't just disappear, it stays with you. And for Jane, it fueled a lifelong battle with self-worth. Speaking about her mother's health issues and eventual passing in an interview, Jane disclosed that for years she lived with pain and guilt. She said, "As a child, you always think it was your fault because the child can't blame the adult because they depend on the adult for survival. It takes a long time to get over the guilt." She spent her entire childhood trying to be perfect, thinking that if she looked perfect, acted perfect, and never made mistakes, maybe, just maybe, her father and mother would finally see her. But no matter what she did, it was never enough, and none of it was her fault. But how did she transition from that traumatic childhood experience to being a Hollywood star? Well, believe it or not, Jane never even wanted to be an actress. Even though she had the Fonda name, the Hollywood connections, and the jaw-dropping looks, she just wasn't interested. But then, something incredible happened. And by something incredible, we mean Lee Strasberg. For those who don't know, Strasberg was the legendary acting coach who trained Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, and Marilyn Monroe, basically almost every acting genius of the era. It wasn't until she met the famous acting coach, the man behind method acting, that something inside her clicked. Strasberg saw something in Jane that she hadn't yet seen in herself, a raw, untapped talent, a presence that could command attention. He immediately told her that she had something special, and that was all it took. One man's belief in her changed everything. She once said, "I went to the actor's studio, and Lee Strasberg told me I had talent, real talent. It was the first time that anyone, except my father, who had to say so, told me I was good at anything. It was a turning point in my life. I went to bed thinking about acting. I woke up thinking about acting. It was like the roof had come off my life." With his encouragement, Jane decided to give acting a real shot, and almost overnight, she became Hollywood's new IT girl. However, it wasn't all rosy for Jane. Her early career in the 90s was filled with glamorous roles that showcased her beauty more than her depth. She starred in light-hearted romantic comedies and was mostly cast as the beautiful, charming love interest. But Jane didn't want to be just a pretty face on the screen. She wanted more. However, it was in 1968 that she took on a role that would make her a cultural phenomenon. She starred in Barbarella, a sci-fi film directed by her then-husband, Roger Vadim. This role turned Jane into a Hollywood symbol of attraction overnight. Of course, she was dazzling, playful, and impossibly beautiful. And while the film made her a household name, it also reinforced the image that she had been desperately trying to break away from. Jane wanted to be taken seriously, to be seen as more than just Henry Fonda's daughter or a pin-up girl from a fantasy film. She wanted to prove that she had talent, depth, and something real to offer. And so in the 1970s, Jane started taking on grittier, more complex roles that showed her true range. The movie that changed everything was Clute, where she played a troubled call girl, Bree Daniels. The role was dark, intense, and emotionally demanding, and Jane absolutely nailed it. As a matter of fact, she put so much into her role that prior to filming, she spent some time interviewing women who were in her character's line of work. And it did help, because she was able to immerse herself in the role and deliver an outstanding performance. Critics were blown away. Audiences saw a completely different side of her. And for the first time, Hollywood recognized her as more than just a pretty face. She won her first Academy Award for Clute, proving that she wasn't just a Fonda by name, she was a powerhouse in her own right. And she didn't stop there. She continued choosing roles that challenged her, that pushed the boundaries of what Hollywood expected of women. The iconic movie Coming Home also earned her another Oscar, further cementing her place as one of the most talented actresses of her time. But Jane wasn't just making headlines for her acting. Believe it or not, she was also making them for her endless controversy and activism as well. Jane Fonda's controversies. While most actresses of her time were happy to smile for the cameras and stay away from controversy, Jane did the exact opposite and more. She wasn't one to sit still and look pretty. Instead, she became one of the most outspoken, politically charged celebrities in Hollywood. Perhaps one of her most shocking controversies that followed her throughout her career was when she famously traveled to North Vietnam during the Vietnam War to speak out against United States military actions. Her visit lasted 2 weeks, and during the time she visited sites that had been bombed by the United States, she had a meeting with prisoners of war and even visited a military installation. Unsurprisingly, this move was met with outrage from many Americans, and to this day, some people still haven't forgiven her for it. What angered people even more was when she was photographed sitting on a North Vietnamese anti-aircraft gun. That photograph threw the media into a frenzy. She was labeled a traitor, accused of siding with the enemy, and even earned the nickname Hanoi Jane. To this day, some Americans still call her Hanoi Jane, and it's been a nickname she's never been able to shake. Unfortunately, this very controversial moment of her career overshadowed her work in Hollywood for many years. But Jane never backed down. She continued using her voice, her platform, and her influence to speak out against war, injustice, and inequality in general. She fought for women's rights, environmental causes, and racial justice long before it was trendy for celebrities to do so. And her activism definitely made her one of the most polarizing figures in America, but also one of the most respected. But that's not the only controversy Jane is remembered for. You see, the actress has always been fiercely independent, outspoken, and a little rebellious. So it's no surprise that her love life was just as dramatic as her career. She's been married 3 times, and every relationship had its own share of controversy that left fans and the media in complete shock. Jane's first husband was Roger Vadim, the French director best known for turning women into bombshells. He was the man behind Brigitte Bardot's rise to fame, and when he met Jane, he wanted to do the same thing for her. Vadim directed her in Barbarella, the movie that made her into a glamour symbol overnight. And while things initially looked perfect between the two behind the scenes, their marriage was a complete mess. Vadim was obsessed with intimacy, and their relationship was anything but traditional. In her later years, Jane revealed that he pressured her into agreeing to an open marriage, something she said she never wanted to do, but went along with just to keep him happy. Unfortunately, by the early 70s, Jane got sick of the entire arrangement and Vadim's lifestyle. She wanted something more serious, and she filed for a divorce. After divorcing him, Jane married Tom Hayden only 3 days after her divorce was finalized. Tom was a hardcore political activist who hated Hollywood and everything it stood for. They had first crossed paths in 1971, and began dating in 1972 after Jane delivered a memorable anti-war speech at a Vietnam protest. Hayden saw Jane as a tool for the revolution, and Jane was drawn to his lifestyle and activism. Of course, she went all in on his world. Reports revealed that she began donating huge sums of money to activist causes, And she even cut down on the usual Hollywood celebrity lifestyle and opted for a simpler and more humble lifestyle. Some say he used her to carry out his political agendas. Others say she wanted to be used because she was passionate about activism and wanted to prove she was more than just a Hollywood actress. Either way, their marriage was intense and controversial from start to finish, and after 17 years, it all fell apart. However, it didn't end in a messy divorce. Instead, Jane and Hayden announced that although their marriage was ending, they'd continue their political partnership. And after Hayden eventually passed, Jane had nothing but good remarks to say about him. She once said, "He had this depth of knowledge, and he gave me structure and guidance, and I learned so much from him that I am forever grateful for. I miss him so much." But in classic Jane fashion, after the marriage ended, she didn't stay single for long. Her third husband was the last person anyone expected. It was Ted Turner, the billionaire media mogul who founded CNN. Jane went from activist wife to media queen, and for a while, she was living the high life with Turner. Private jets, yachts, mansions, you name it. But deep down, she wasn't happy. And after 10 years, she walked away. And that was it. After that, Jane never married again. But the good thing is that although her love life was full of ups, downs, and wild turns through it all, she never lost herself. However, the battles she's faced with her health have been so severe that fans are genuinely worried for the actress. 2010 breast cancer diagnosis. Jane Fonda has always been known for her strength, resilience, and refusal to back down from a fight. But in 2010, the fight became too personal. At 72 years old, Jane was diagnosed with breast cancer. For a woman who had built an empire on health and fitness and had spent decades teaching the world how to stay strong, active, and youthful, this was a devastating reality check. Unlike many cancer patients who discover their illness after symptoms appear, Jane's diagnosis came out of nowhere. She wasn't feeling sick. She had no pain, no obvious warning signs. In fact, she felt perfectly healthy. But during a routine mammogram, doctors found something concerning: a tiny yet suspicious growth in her breast. Given her age and medical history, of course, doctors ordered a biopsy. Initially, Jane, who is known to be mostly optimistic, wasn't too worried. She had been healthy her whole life, was still working, and was still active. Cancer wasn't even something she had considered. But when the results came back, the news was both shocking and devastating. She had breast cancer. But here's the thing. Most celebrities would have kept something like this a secret, at least until they had all the answers. But Jane Fonda has never been like most celebrities, because just days after her diagnosis, she went public with the news. But what got people even more surprised was the fact that instead of responding with fear or sadness, her response to the tragic diagnosis was super calm. Instead of panicking, she reassured fans that she was handling it well, that she wasn't afraid, and that she would continue working and living her life as usual. Of course, it's normal to feel some fear and anxiety when being diagnosed with something as serious as cancer, but Jane made sure that the world didn't get to see that side of her. Perhaps one of the biggest reasons Jane was able to stay calm was because her cancer was classified as non-invasive. More specifically, she had ductal carcinoma in situ, which is a form of breast cancer that is contained within the milk ducts and hasn't spread to other tissues. The good thing is that, unlike invasive breast cancer, this type doesn't spread aggressively, and if it's caught early, it's highly treatable. Doctors explained that her prognosis was very good, and her treatment wouldn't require the intense, grueling chemotherapy that many cancer patients face. Still, there was only one way to make sure the cancer was completely removed, and that was surgery. Well, after weighing her options, Jane decided to undergo a lumpectomy, a surgical procedure where only the cancerous part of the breast is removed, rather than the entire breast. For Jane, this was an easy choice. She trusted her doctors, she understood the risks, and most importantly, she wanted to move on with her life as quickly as possible. Thankfully, the surgery was successful, and within weeks, Jane was back to work. But let's be real. Even though Jane's cancer was caught early and treated successfully, it definitely left a lasting impact on her life. For one, she had spent decades promoting fitness and wellness, believing that a strong body could protect you from anything. But this diagnosis was a wake-up call, and a reminder that even the healthiest people aren't invincible. And so, after her recovery, Jane became even more vocal about the importance of regular health checkups. She used her platform to encourage women, especially older women, to never skip their routine checks and doctor visits. But just when fans thought Jane had beaten cancer for good, another shocking revelation came in 2018. 2018 lip cancer diagnosis. No cancer survivor wants to ever hear that the disease they had battled and won had returned, and unfortunately Jane had to get this unfortunate news. This time it wasn't breast cancer like before. It was a cancerous tumor on her lip. Unlike her breast cancer in 2010, which was discovered during a routine mammogram, this time, Jane saw the problem herself. She had noticed a small growth on her lower lip. At first, she didn't think much of it. For someone who spent decades in the spotlight constantly getting her hair, skin, and makeup done, a little bump or irritation wasn't something that immediately raised alarms. However, as time passed, she realized it wasn't going away, and if there's one thing Jane Fonda learned from past experiences, it's that you don't ignore your health. She had already beaten cancer once, and she wasn't about to take any chances. So she did exactly what she tells women everywhere to do. She got it checked out. And unfortunately, the results were not what she wanted to hear. The growth was cancerous. And in true Jane fashion, she took action immediately and scheduled surgery to have the growth removed. But here's the part that had fans super impressed. Even though the news broke just as she was promoting the 4th season of Grace and Frankie, Jane refused to put her life on hold and continued carrying on like she didn't just face a serious illness. As a matter of fact, she showed up to a press event with a bandage on her face right after her surgery and casually announced what had happened. In an interview, she casually joked about the entire thing, saying, "I just had cancer taken from my lip. I thought it was going to heal in time before I came before you, but it's fine. I just wanted to explain it. I don't normally go around like this." Then, in another interview, she randomly said, "The world is falling apart. What's a lip? No tears, no drama, no fear. Just another random day in the life of Jane Fonda." That's exactly how she made it look. However, even though Jane handled the situation calmly, she knew for sure that not everyone is as lucky as she was. This was her second cancer diagnosis, and both times she caught it early. But just when fans thought Jane Fonda had beaten every obstacle life could throw at her, she made an announcement in 2022 that left everyone in shock and worried. Battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Fans of the legendary Hollywood actress were left heartbroken when the news broke that Jane Fonda had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of blood cancer, in 2022. She took to her Instagram page to announce the heartbreaking news, stating, "So, my dear friends, I want to share something personal. I've been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and have started chemo treatments." Unfortunately, while she sounded super confident and maybe unbothered, unlike her 2010 breast cancer or her 2018 skin cancer, both of which were caught early and treated quickly, by the way, this was a much bigger fight, and the fact that she was way older didn't make matters any easier. In case you didn't know, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a type of cancer that starts in the lymphatic system, the body's network of vessels and nodes that help fight infections. Unlike breast cancer or skin cancer, which stay localized in one area, it can spread throughout the body, affecting organs like the spleen, bone marrow, and liver. And so, this isn't just a simple tumor that can be removed with surgery, and Jane knew exactly what she was up against this time. But once again, Jane made sure that her friends, family, and fans didn't see her scared or overwhelmed because, let's be real, receiving a cancer diagnosis for the 3rd time must be terrifying. In her Instagram post, she assured fans that the situation was very much under control by writing, "80% of people survive this type of cancer, so I feel very lucky." And in typical Jane fashion once again, instead of focusing on herself, she somehow found a way to turn the conversation toward something bigger, which was the topic of healthcare access for others. She wrote, "I'm privileged to have health insurance and access to the best doctors and treatment. I realize, and it's painful, that I'm privileged in this. Almost every family in America has had to deal with cancer at one time or another, and far too many don't have access to the quality health care that I'm receiving, and this is not right." Can you imagine? Even while battling cancer, Jane Fonda was still fighting for others. Unlike her previous cancers, which required surgery, This time around, she needed chemotherapy, and so, for months, she underwent aggressive chemo treatments to fight the cancer. Despite the brutal chemo sessions, Jane made it clear to fans who were eagerly waiting for updates that she was fine and was handling the treatment well. She even joked about it in interviews, saying, "The week when I get the chemo is hard, but then after that, I feel good. I feel very strong. Even on the days that I get chemo, I still do a workout. It's slow and not what it used to be, but still, I'm moving and keeping strong." Of course, her fans were super concerned, with many trooping to her social media pages sending her prayers, love, and support. And for a while it felt like everyone had their hearts in their stomachs till December 15th, 2022, when Jane finally shared the news that everyone had been hoping for. Her cancer was finally in remission. Once again, Jane Fonda had beaten cancer for the third time. How amazing! Sharing the good news on social media, she wrote, "I'm feeling so blessed and fortunate. I thank all of you who prayed and sent good thoughts my way. I am confident that it played a role in the good news." But what most people don't realize is that facing 3 separate cancer diagnoses over the years was not just a physical challenge. It was a mental and emotional war, a brutal one at that. And for a woman who has spent her whole life taking care of her body, being forced to confront her own mortality was a reality she never expected. How did the multiple cancer diagnoses change Jane's perspective on life? Mental and emotional impact. You see, before her first diagnosis in 2010, Jane Fonda was all about control. She controlled her career choices. She controlled her fitness and health. She even controlled how the world saw her. But when she got the shocking and life-changing diagnosis, control was suddenly ripped away. She realized that even the strongest, healthiest people aren't invincible. For decades, she had built a brand around health and fitness. She was the woman who sold millions of workout tapes and who stayed in peak physical shape well into her 80s. But cancer didn't care about how many hours she spent exercising or how clean her diet was. But here's a part that many people don't know. While Jane always appeared strong and confident about her diagnoses, to the public in private, there were severe moments of fear. She later admitted that during her intense battle with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, she had nights where she lay in bed anxious, thinking about death and wondering if this was it, and what if she doesn't beat it this time. She thought about her family, her legacy, unfinished work, the films she still wanted to make, and the causes she still wanted to fight for. And according to her, thinking about the end of life isn't always a bad thing. She once said, "I think about death a lot. I have for the last 30 years. I think that's a healthy thing to do. It's hard to live right if you don't think about death. It's a part of life." But despite the occasional anxiety that came with her health battles, Jane Fonda made one strong decision, and it was to use her voice to raise awareness for cancer. Perhaps one reason why Jane decided not to go through her cancer battle privately was because she wanted to use her experience to start conversations and push for change. And she did just that by turning her survival into a movement. She became an even bigger advocate for cancer research funding, early detection screenings, and healthcare access for everyone. She also worked closely with organizations like the American Cancer Society and Susan G. Komen for the cure. She has attended multiple events, donated money, and spoken out about the importance of regular checkups. At a time when most people would have stepped away from the spotlight, Jane Fonda used her own battle to help others, and that's what makes her truly iconic. But how are things looking for the actress now? What has she been up to? Life after cancer. Today, at 87 years old, Jane Fonda is still as fierce as ever. She's still acting, still fighting for social causes, and definitely still showing the world that age is just a number. But after everything she's been through, her priorities have most likely shifted. She has learned to slow down, enjoy life, and appreciate every moment. She also admitted that she now spends more time with her family and with herself because cancer opened her eyes to see the beauty in community. She once said, "Cancer is a teacher, and I'm paying attention to the lessons it teaches me. One thing it's shown me already is the importance of community, of growing and deepening one's community so that we are not alone." And while she's still as passionate as ever about her work and activism, she's also no longer afraid to take a step back and just enjoy being alive. Because at the end of the day, That's the greatest victory of all. We're just glad that Jane Fonda has survived it all. From Hollywood scrutiny to political controversies to 3 separate cancer battles. And yet she's still here, stronger than ever, more fearless than ever, and more determined than ever. What's your favorite thing about Jane Fonda? Tell us in the comments section below. Don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.